Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. What I want to do today is that I wanted to take a look at watches that I thought were good watches for collectors. In other words, they had certain features to them that I thought were important. And while I was thinking about it, I got this every month, not every month, every now and then, Patek Philippe sends me their magazine. I subscribed to it when I got my Calatrava, and it's been a really enjoyable magazine. Not always about watches. There's a lot of stuff about watches, but not everything. Like the cover of this one has these shoes that were part of an art thing from the 1950s. But in it, there was a list of things that these are the 10 values of Patek Philippe. And I thought I'd take a look at those, first of all, quickly, to say, is this really everything we need, and which ones I think are important, and then take a look at the watches that I think are important too. The first ones they had was independence, and yeah, I can see that. You don't want to have someone breathing over your shoulder, but that's not the most important one, because sometimes it works better another way. Tradition, I happen to like tradition a lot, and I think that's important because if we wanted a modern watch without any tradition, get a smartwatch. Nothing, no mechanics to wind up. Innovation, I love innovation, but there's innovation and there is sort of changing tracks. We're on sort of the mechanical track, the tradition of that, and innovation on that. There's a lot of room for innovation with mechanical devices. Some things to answer the whole question, gauging from a mainspring expanding and providing the power. So that in that context, rather than just put an electric motor in it and that'll work fine. Quality and fine, workmanship's important. Rarity, to me, that's not as important. I mean, if you have a good watch and it's done with everything else, it doesn't have to be rare, but some people like that. Value. Now, value is a hard thing. These are 10 values, and I think it probably has to do with what you pay for a watch. That would be my guess. Aesthetics, very important. What a watch looks like. Service, if something goes wrong with it, can they take care of it? Yeah. Emotion. There seems to be a lot of emotion among collectors, so I'll pass on that one. And finally, heritage. I like heritage. Looking back to sort of newer heritage, like guys who were in sort of the end of the last century, people like Roth and George Daniels, and some of those guys. Some of them are still around from the 1900s, and now we're in the 20th, so sort of the 20th century to the 21st century. Okay, so let's take a look at the ones that I think are good ones for collectors, and I'll explain why as we go along. The first one, I think, one of the best deals around is Harboring 2. And the reason for collectors is that, first of all, they have something that is at their entry level. You have the Felix, which is 5,500, but it's handmade, hand wound, and it's done by Richard Harbring, who is and Marie Harbring, who are a couple real watchmakers, and that I think is to get and they won a number of Grand Prix awards, by the way, too. And they're a little outfit. They're in Austria. They're not Swiss. They're not German. They're a wonderful company, and I think they're one of the best deals for collectors. They want to get a good watch by a real watchmaker. This would be one that is affordable, and I think that is a good one to get. Jaeger-LeCoultre. Now, Jaeger-LeCoultre has a lot of stuff, and they're sort of the ones that they're still have on their site that they're still selling and making. Then they have a very good tradition, just in the 21st century and more recently, that are now no more. So a couple of ones I want to take out. First of all, the Reverso dual face small seconds is one of the most interesting watches around. The Reverso was actually sort of the original sports watch, made for a guy playing poco playing polo, who really enjoyed. He liked the Jaeger-LeCoultre, and so they made him one. You could flip it over while you're playing polo and just a steel back to it. And my wife has one just like that. But then they also have other ones. They said, well, we could flip it open, and instead of having a steel back, we'll have another dial. And so the dual face is really my favorite reversal that they have. However, they used to have a whole line of watches called the Geophysic, and they had things like jumping seconds, a world timer. They had all these neat watches. This one, this master controlled geographic, is one. I don't think it was part of the Geophysic line, but it was along those lines, and it's very affordable. If you can find one. Now the MSRP on this was $18,840. I found an offer for one for $7,000. Really good watch. Same thing with the Reverso. You can find tons of Reversos. One thing about Jaeger-LeCoultre is that their prices go down. Now, just to be clear about something, they don't lose value. A watch is gonna have its value unless you break it or something like that. But value in a watch is sort of intrinsic to the watch. The price varies. Some people don't know the value, or they have a different value for a watch. But the price is the thing that varies. Now, so I said, well, I don't want to get a watch that the price drops on. There are two ways to go about it. Is to get a pre-owned watch and the price has already dropped. So let's say this Master Control Geographic, it was originally $18,000, and now you can get them for less than half that price. Now someone says, well, yeah, but it's not going to hold its value. At the reduced price, it's going to hold its value. It really, I mean, in fact, you can, if you're thinking of having a watch holding its price, oftentimes it's better to get one that drops like a rock, and then when you go to resell it, it's not going to drop anymore because it's already made that drop. It's a different way to think about things, I know, but it works. Trust me. Sometimes they go up after that. That's happened to me. Okay, the next brand. Now, this is the H. Moser is a brand where you're looking at more into what's called high horology. I call it exceptional horology. High horology it's got too much marketing involved and doesn't involve both steel and precious metals. It's mainly they prefer precious metals. Now, this has sort of got two sides to it. There was they sort of had a renaissance in the early 2000s, and they came up. This is one of the watches. This is called the Henry double hairspring. A lot of innovation. The double hairspring was one of those constant force elements that actually worked. That would help to have a constant movement, because what it does is that with the two hairsprings, it kept the balance stem positioned. Okay, one going one way and one way, then so it offset the torque. They don't make it anymore because it turned out to be very expensive to make. But now they're starting to introduce it again. Now the prices of these, probably the MSRPs start around $12,000 for the Pioneers. But they have a range. This is one thing I like about H. Moser at Compagnie, is that they have a range of price. Their entry-level price, like I said, is about around 12,900 Swiss francs, which is about a little over 13,000 US dollars. The used prices, if you go and you go to some place like Chrono24, and you'll find the used prices begin around 9,000. There's sort of the watches before they came with what I'll call the newest set, sort of the second 21st century set. They used to be great value, great prices and great values. You could get them for much less than you can get them today. This is one example. I have another example of a great one. This is it's now called the Endeavor. Back then it was called the Benu, and they have another one called the Mayu. The one up there with the small seconds is the Mayu. Now those are the older ones, and they're good deals if you can find one for a good price. The problem is that they seem to have gone up. All of H. Moser's have been going up in their price, and what they lose when you sell them from new. Great brand. That's all I gotta say. They're well made, and they're excellent. By the way, too, in talking to their CEO, Edouard Meylan, one of the things, they make about 3,000 watches a year, which isn't very many. Patek Philippe makes 50,000, Rolex makes over 1 million, just to give you an idea. But they don't make a whole lot, but the ones they make are really excellent. And also, even though they only make and sell 3,000 watches, they sell about around 50,000 or more Straumann hairsprings, right? Which is like the top watchmakers will use it and simply not mention it, because they like everyone to think they're all in-house. Okay, so H. Moser is another one I think is a great one for collectors looking for a high-end watch. Now, this next one, Nomos Glashütte. Some years ago, a number of top watchmakers were in, I think it was in Singapore or someplace like that, and they were with a group, and they were all asked, so what do you think is the best watch value under $10,000? And Philippe Dufour said he thought it was Nomos. I don't know if I would agree that's the best, but I would say it's certainly one of the best. I think it's they have great spread of types of watches and prices of watches. Now, $37.80 for the Metro Date Power Reserve. It simply happened to be a watch that I really like. And so I thought, well, I'll put that one up there. But they have them, they start around $1,500 for some of the different models. All of them are mechanical. And for the most part, they're all sort of originally in-house. They have one called the Alpha. Now, the Alpha is made by Nomos in Glashütte, but they were originally, I think, sort of based on the Pazu 7001 or the ETA 7001, because that's what they started with, and then they liked it, but then they wanted to make their own, and so they did a whole bunch of things and changed it to the Alpha, which is pretty much the same as the 7001, but still built by Nomos in Glashütte. It's a little different. Most of the ones they have are called DUW, and it's a German term, and I forgot what it means. But those are really very, very good movements. The Metro Date Power Reserve 3700, and so the top of the line, I think, is a Lambda, it has the DUW 1001. Both of them are hand wound. Both of these are 3 Hertz, 21,600, so naturally I like them a lot. But they do have automatics, and I think some of those are 28,800 if you like the 4 Hertz mode. Great watches, great prices, great variety. I think that's another good one for collectors. Now this next one is Vacheron Constantin. Vacheron Constantin was one of the original Holy Trinity, and they they certainly belong there. But they have certain things about them that I like, namely that they do have some range, and on the pre-owned market you can find some good buys. You can find lots of them under 10,000, some maybe even around 5,000 for some of the not ancient but a little older, sort of like early 2000 or in the 1990s. The one I have is called the Historique American 1921, and this watch has been great. Now, what happened? The movement for this is called the 4400, and they made that. I think it was in 2013, because this, I believe, was the first watch that used that movement, and since then they've used it in a lot of their, in fact, just about all of their hand wound movements. And at the same, a couple of years later, I think it was in 2016, they came out with one called the 5100, which was in there for their overseas. Really a great movement. And so you'll see a lot of those too, the 5100 and the 4400 in their watches. And they're also, the thing that's important about it, they have a Geneva seal, which is a guarantee of really high, of a certain high quality. They used to all go to Patek Philippe, but Patek Philippe started using silicone hairsprings, and they said, forget about it. It wouldn't give them any more. Now the entry level is one called the 56, and the first version of the 56, or I should say the lowest price 56, it's called the 56 self-winding, and it's 12,700. The caliber 1326 is part of, it doesn't come directly from Vacheron Constantin. Vacheron Constantin is owned by the Richemont group, and Richemont decided that they were going to have a movement making facility called Valfleury, and so the same movement base is in the 56, as well as I think it's in a Cartier and maybe a Piaget, I'm not sure, but some other companies that are owned by Richemont have the same movement. Now, according to Vacheron Constantin, yeah, that's sort of underneath everything, and it's a good base movement, but they fixed it up. Well, it's also the only watch in the collection that doesn't have the Geneva seal, and I guess it's not a bad movement, it's just not as good as the other ones. Now the 56, I think it's called the Day Date, doesn't have the Valfleury movement, and it does have a Geneva seal. The 56 is a good looking watch. So another one I like is the Historique Triple Calendar 1942. Now list price on this, the MSRP is 24,100. And it's sort of a funny thing about that. They have the numbers around that make up the hand date, the 31 numbers around the edges there, are in blue. It's sort of a dark blue, it looks almost black. They used to have two. One had sort of the red numbers, well, they weren't sort of, they were red, and a little different color combination. Up in the upper right-hand corner there, you can see it. And I found one for $13,499, and that's pre-owned. But you can find other Vacheron Constantins at some good prices. And when I say good, I mean like under 10,000, and like I said, some are even under 5. So that's another one that I think is good for collectors. Now, this next one, Christopher Ward, I've always liked them, and probably the reason I liked them originally is that they used to have a watch for Morgans, and I'm a big Morgan motor car fan, so I don't have one. I've never had one, but I like them. And so I thought, well, this must be a great watch company. It's an English watch company, and they have a really good variety of watches. Now, the movements they're using right now are Sellita before they were ETA. They have their own movement. They have one called the SH21, but I think they only have one watch model with the SH21. And but for the most part, they they have Sellita. So one of the things I've always liked about Christopher Ward is that you know what you're getting. If they're going to put a Sellita or an ETA in it, they tell you what it's going to be. Some watch companies don't do that. They imply that they make all of their own, which is nonsense, but they do it anyway. The two here, both of these are brand new ones, and so yet they're on pre-order, but they're pretty good deals. The C65 Super Compressor Elite. This is a dive watch, 1690 for that one. That's the MSRP price on it. The Bel Canto was a huge success. It has a little chime. It runs on a Sellita SW200, but then they made their own module, the chiming module, which is an FS01 by Christopher Ward. Their own people made that one. This has got a little chime to it, and it won a Grand Prix award in 2023 for the Petite Aiguille Award. By the way, some of these other ones, Nomos is one, Vacheron Constantin is one. In fact, it won the very first one back in 2001. So has H. Moser. They won a lot of them. So most of the ones we're talking about. So has Harboring 2. Harboring 2 run a whole boatload of them. So all of these, it's one of the things that's nice to see that these guys are going up into competition. Anyway, so and these are very affordable. They have a nice range, worth looking at. Now, this next one is Maurice Lacroix. And I found out about Maurice Lacroix some years ago. I got this Maurice Lacroix 736 because it has, well, it's called a masterpiece. It's not called the 736. The movement is a Jacques 736, and out of some, I don't know why, I just thought that Jacques 736 is a cool movement. It's a shape movement. It was done by Pierre Lacroix, who then had to go to prison, and a bunch of other stuff, but it had an interesting history. But when I got this, I showed it to a friend of mine who was a watchmaker and had been a judge for the Grand Prix. And he said, you know, most people don't realize it, but Maurice Lacroix is really an excellent watchmaker. And even though most of their movements were ETA or Sellita or something like that, they do have their own in-house movement. But some of the stuff they've done. Now, the one I found was the Maurice Lacroix Masterpiece Le Chronograph. There's a big number there. I put the number there just to be sure it's the right one. And I found one for $4,690. Now, in and of itself, that's no great shakes. What's remarkable about it is the movement in that was created by Andreas Streller. Now, if you go to Andreas Streller's price, all of them are over $100,000. I think there was one for $58,000, and the rest were all $100,000 or more. And so, why you can get an Andreas Streller made movement for a fraction of what you can even look at one for. What happened in 2006, Maurice Lacroix went to Andreas Streller and said, hey, we'd like you to develop a chronograph for us. And they wanted it to look like the Venus 175 caliber, which was a famous caliber. So he did. I should have had a picture of the back of this watch. Incredible movement. Really a beautiful movement, and it was by Streller. Now, another thing about Maurice Lacroix is that they have a lot of different things going on the dial. The Masterpiece Triple Retrograde is one example. 6250, that's the MSRP. you can find great deals on used Maurice Lacroix. Again, this is why I think it's a good collector's watch. This particular one is with their caliber ML292, which is an in-house movement by Maurice Lacroix. So this is another one of those brands that I think a lot of people, they don't know much about it, but I think for collectors, it's one worth looking into. Now, the final one I have are two watch companies, I suppose. There's Seiko and Grand Seiko. I think there's still some giant Seiko holding company owns that, and half of Japan along with it. Seiko just makes good stuff. That's about the only way I can put it. They make good movements. They make good watches. They have a wide variety of prices. Two I have here, they're not the low end, but they are on sort of the lower end of it. For the Seiko, the caliber 6R54, it's called a Prospect C. This Prospect C, the MSRP is $1,500. It's a GMT, dual time zone. For that price, and it's a well-made watch. Now, the Grand Seiko is sort of their upscale brand, really. This particular one, I think, is on the lower end of it, is part of what they call the Heritage Collection. They do have some other ones in the Grand Seiko that, even though they're good timekeepers, they're not part of the traditional mechanical horology that we know. Basically what they are, they have something called the something drive. And these watches are essentially, they have a quartz oscillator, and the quartz they have an automatic movement that generates electricity for the quartz. And while they keep excellent time, and it's amazing technology that went into it, not something that I see as fitting into the mechanical watches, but that's me and not the world. Spring drive, that's what it's called, the ones that have their own thing. Anyway, now those are the watches I think are worthwhile for collectors to consider. I'd like to hear what you think. This is an opportunity to subscribe if you like. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection.